What we're trying to focus on in this second conversation is the extent to which we are able to integrate water into the core business strategy and core business operations to lift up the lessons of what works and what doesn't work. So I'm going to ask my panelists to join me. I've got 4 this time, so I'm going to just move one seat down. I'm going to invite Jaco Schoeman to join us. Jaco is the COO at DRDGOLD Limited, and of course, he brings into this conversation rather operational insight in how do you actually balance resource extraction, rehabilitation, and environmental responsibility. Jaco, thank you for being here. Natasha Ramkirpal is with us. She's a group lead looking after water security at Coca-Cola Beverages Africa. Natasha, thank you very much for being with us. And of course, she brings very practical industry experience in implementing water security frameworks across complex, multi-country environments into the conversation. Thank you for being here. Derrick Pautz. Derrick, welcome. He is the head of developments looking after Gauteng at Atterbury Property. We have had a property focus somewhat in this conversation this morning, and so Derrick brings it home for us with a focus on Gauteng with, of course, a developer's perspective once again. And then last but not least, we have Molatelo Motau, who is the Sustainability Project Manager at HEINEKEN Beverages, joining us in the conversation. He has led award-winning projects across the continent with expertise in corporate sustainability, climate change, circular economies, as well as sustainable agriculture. Thank you and welcome to you all. And so I'm going to get straight into it, and we're going to be sharp and focused just as we did in the first panel. And maybe, Jaco, let's start off with you, because if we look at the mining industry, and an industry where water security is existential to the business, I suppose the question to you is, how have you embedded water security into the core business so that you're not dealing with water security as a compliance function, because really it is part of the very essence of what you do?
Thanks, Nozi. So just quickly to give you context, we a surface operator, we process approximately 60,000 tons of material a day. For every ton that we process, I require 1,000 liters of water. So you're talking about 60 million liters of water being used, not consumed. So we'll get to that distinction just now. So important is, I think that the easy question is, and it's been spoken about quite regularly this morning, reuse. Well, firstly, optimization of your usage, then reuse and recycle. The more difficult part of that question is the technology, the systems, and the processes that you need to implement to actually give effect to that reuse. So what we had to do is about 60% of the water that we use is recovered from the tailings dams. In terms of the optimization of that, we also started looking at drilling scavenger boreholes. The scavenger boreholes is to intercept any pollution plumes that might come from these tailings dams. Now, very important, Gerrie mentioned it a little bit earlier, it's to distinguish between catching the polluted water and not drilling too deep to drill into aquifers, which is good quality water. So again, it's understanding your system. And then about 36% of the water consumed is then from reused water, treated sewage water, as well as treated acid mine drainage. And then we've reduced over the last 10 years our dependency on potable water from approximately 20%, we're now down to 4%. So you need to understand the salt balance in your water circuit, because eventually what you need to end up with is you need to treat that water in your circuit to prevent any degradation or calcification within the circuit itself. So a lot of effort needs to go into how you manage water, how you value water, how you look at water. And then also externally, in South Africa, we're a stressed water country. With an operation like ours and the amount of water that we consume, the last position you want to be in is one where you start competing for water with communities.
So, Jaco, I mean, the range of different initiatives that you're doing at DRDGOLD is really impressive. And of course, it's interesting to hear how you think about the community. But I think it would be a missed opportunity to have a COO and not ask, how much, if you were to think about your job, what percentage of your job is thinking about water?
Well, I'll be honest with you, it's probably about 25% of my job
Okay.
is thinking about water. The water management, we've got, as I've mentioned to you, a very sophisticated system in place that gives a regular 8-hour production, just as you'd have your production inputs coming through to
Yeah.
you. You get water figures.
One of the things that Jaco does mention, Natasha, is he talks about technology. So I'm quite interested maybe to build on that with you and to invite you to speak to us a little bit about what is the technology strategy that Coca-Cola Beverages Africa is using as a means of managing water, but also thinking about how water, the impact of water in your core business.
Thanks. So for Coca-Cola Beverages, I'm sure in 2026, everybody right now has heard of AI as part of your technology strategy. For us, the first thing about tech strategy is that it's risk-based. So it's risk first and not tech first. The key thing that we've tried to avoid is technology fragmentation.
Sure.
So it has to be tech that is aligned to what we require. So Kerry mentioned monitoring, control. These are some of the things that we're focusing on very heavily right now. So source water variability, and I'm using variability, not deterioration necessarily, because it varies from country to country, context to context. The climate variability that we're seeing, floods in Mozambique, droughts in Namibia, these are all context specific. So we always say water is local, therefore we need to have local solutions. That comes, the very same applies to technology.
Yeah.
Water context is important, and what we do is we conduct detailed source water analysis because we need visibility of what our sources are. We then use this to create risk assessments that first help us understand the source. It helps us to understand how our facilities respond to these sources. Sure. And then we look at efficiency. So a huge part of the strategy is being more efficient in our operations. It is reuse on site, so we invest heavily in that. But it must make sense for the operations when it comes to how we align capital with
Sure.
technology strategy. So not many people may know, but the water resource strategy from DWS, I think the first one was released in 2004. And aligned to that, if we had looked at that, and not saying that we haven't, but if businesses had looked at it at that point, you would have seen that water was a risk then. It's been an underlying risk throughout, and those strategies have been integrated into business strategies for Coca-Cola Beverages for a long time now.
Yeah.
So we are seeing the variability. We are planning accordingly with technology that is fit for purpose and aligned to water use efficiency, reuse, recycle on site, and energy efficiency, of course.
And energy efficiency. I think it's quite interesting to see how you're leveraging the technology so that you have a stronger alignment between your capital strategy and how you're deploying that capital within a very specific context and market. And so I think it's really great that we've brought some sort of technology insight into the conversation, which we hadn't had before, because I think behavior and technology can really work really well together. And we had perhaps had a bit of a bias towards the behavioral lens up until this point. So I want to maybe, Derrick, let's bring property back into the conversation. We had a good look at all the amazing things that Baldwin is doing. Let's change the focus now to Atterbury instead. But the question to you is, how does water security influence site selection, design, the decisions you make around which assets and where those assets are and how you invest? And essentially, it's the same question that I was putting to Jaco. How important is the water security in the work that you do?
Thank you. I think firstly we share the same frustrations as Steve has. And obviously in our development pipeline, site selection is where we start, and it's one of the most critical things we look at is the services that are available.
Sure.
To service that site, with water probably being the most critical. If you're lucky, there's a bulk connection that has the sufficient quality and capacity to service your development, and then you have the simple task of paying your development contributions, doing your bulk connections, and carrying on. But that's a rare luxury in the property development world. More likely, there isn't a bulk service available, or the quality and capacity is not there. And you pay your bulk contributions to the municipality, but more often than not, the municipality doesn't have the sufficient financial capacity to actually upgrade or install that bulk service. And then the onus falls on the property developer to do that,
Yeah.
which can make a project or a development not feasible if you can't get that. And then on the design, we also, we look at all our buildings, we aim for EDGE certification, advanced EDGE, and we install all the latest tech in low water usage, from taps, toilets, irrigation, making sure that the planting meets the environment in which we're developing so that we have low irrigation need. We incorporate alternative sources, whether that be rainwater harvesting, grey water harvesting, often borehole, often through filtration systems. We make a lot of use of Gary systems. And then, pumping that back into the development, either as potable or as grey water in the different systems. But what we find is most useful to us is understanding our water usage. So from our bulk connection, our municipal meter, having a check meter after that, and every time it splits into major components, we meter on all those interventions so that we can see that the sum of the parts equals the main,
Sure.
and for easy and accurate detection of leakage and fixing that. And all of this just makes business sense. You go to asset value. The less water you use, the less your consumer, your tenant, your resident is paying for that
Yeah.
utility. But it makes sense for us as well, these systems where we can reuse the water and charge a tariff on that adds
Yeah.
to the bottom line for us.
Yeah, it's such a strong reinforcement of the business case of really truly understanding your usage, leveraging your data, and then passing that through as empowering information to the end user and creating a system of efficiency. So thank you very much for bringing in that perspective. Molatelo, I would imagine that as a beverage producer, water security is then extremely important, and probably determines what you do or what you can do in any given market. Maybe talk to us a little bit about how you work with your risk assessments and how they shape and influence the kind of targets, production targets that you would have in the different markets where Heineken is.
All right. No, thank you, Nosy, and good morning to everyone. As Heineken, water is very important for us. You look at the product that we produce, agriculture is very critical for us as well. So at Heineken, we have over 80 OPCOs globally. And with those OPCOs, we look at, some of them, they are in water stress areas.
Yeah.
South Africa is one OPCO that is in water stress area. What we do at Heineken, we have a 2030 global strategy, and that strategy, we went all out to say that this is the intention at Heineken. We're going to treat water seriously. We're going to set targets that we will need to meet by 2030. As it is, it's 4 years to go, so there's a lot of pressure for us to achieve that target. So out of OPCOs, South Africa being one, we have a source vulnerability assessment that we do, and for all the production sites, they'll go through that assessment just to check if the production site is in a water stress area.
Sure.
And if it is in a water stress area, we then do a further assessment to see how much water are they using, what are the targets that we can do to set for the specific production site. Like I said, in South Africa, it's very pressing. I think out of all the production sites that we have in South Africa, 80% of them, they are in water stress areas. So we've got very high targets that we have set based on the strategy that we need to achieve. So it is, our targets are guided by science. There is
Sure.
a science behind them.
Yeah.
And then the calculations and everything else comes in, which is very fundamental. Yeah.
And I think it reinforces some of Natasha's earlier comments about each market being unique and each context being unique. I want to stay with you a little bit, Molatelo, because one of the things that we heard, and I suppose both from Lubabalo as well as the Director General, was that there are some partnerships that seem to be working. There is some degree of seeing partnerships with municipalities and other players that are perhaps shifting the dial a little bit. There are some pockets of excellence that probably need to be scaled. Are there any partnerships that have been helpful to Heineken where you work with municipalities, potentially in these water-stressed environments that you've highlighted?
Definitely. You know, I tell people that normally corporates or industry, they want to be the flag bearers and be known as the ones that do more good. But then within the space, we need to collaborate, and partnerships are very essential. So at Heineken, within South Africa, there's a partnership that we're working, there's a model that we're working with the Strategic Water Partnerships Network, which is different industries. You get your mining, you get your FMCGs. And then we look into what solutions we can work with. How do we then get municipalities on board? How do we lead municipalities? Because then what I can tell you, they've highlighted that there are problems with municipalities. But then as an industry that is operating within a municipality, if I have lived experiences in certain areas, like for Heineken, I mean, we operate everywhere. Like I said, it's 80 OPCOs. If I was able to work with better with municipalities, let's say in Mexico, I'll need to bring those land experiences here to say that, how do I then onboard these municipalities?
Sure.
Municipalities are not perfect, but then there is a role that we need to play. If we are able to influence and lead them to do the right things, we should be able to do that. So out of the municipalities that we've worked with in Gauteng, which is, it's a problem. But then, you know, we are seeing a bit of change because then they need to be capacitated. They need to be educated on what needs to be done right. And we need to lead as an industry.
Sure.
Hence those collective networks or platforms that we are creating to have those dialogues and to have the solutions that are needed for our country.
An overall challenge, however, there is what I'm hearing, an ownership and an accountability and a desire to do better. Derrick, I want to stay a little bit in this municipality conversation, because one of the things you said in your first response, you spoke about all of these different things that are actually good for business. And if we bring the municipality into the equation, what have you seen in some of the partnerships you might have put in place with municipalities, practices that are not only good for business, but are also good for service delivery, are good for what happens inside the business and what happens outside the fence?
And I think there is a change recently where municipalities are more open to discussion with the private sector.
Sure.
And it was mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of progress in making water available to more of the population, but the level of service has declined.
Yeah.
And we often see as a developer in our bulk contributions or ring fence, they have to be used for new infrastructure for municipalities. They cannot be used for existing infrastructure maintenance. So there's a gap there. But we're seeing that change in municipalities now, where they now are willing to, let's use that money and maintain the existing systems, which helps with that supply.
It's a very practical insight, and I would imagine as one thinks about a municipality that they might engage, this becomes a very useful conversation. Natasha, as a final question to you, one of the things we started off with was, and I think it might have been Melanie who spoke about this, who said, you know, water has been sort of a slowly building crisis that now cannot be ignored. If you could give advice to business leaders on which signal you think they should be watching today to ensure that they are able to catch a risk before, or water risk, before it becomes a business disruption or a crisis, what would be that one signal that you'd want them to focus on?
So firstly, recently, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, the United Nations released a landmark report called Water Bankruptcy, which basically states the state of water we're in, not just in South Africa, but across the world. And Oliver mentioned it as well when he was up on stage previously around water risk being business risk. So you won't necessarily see a water interruption because that happens quite quickly.
Sure.
It's too late by the time you have an interruption. But water risk is business risk. You start to see it as a risk in terms of how your people, your teams start to respond. They're responding and spending more time on quality interruptions, supply interruptions, as opposed to planning and long-term strategic. So those type of signals start indicating that it's now crossed into business disruption territory, as opposed to it just being on the outskirts of what you're doing. So businesses that remain resilient are the ones that have very clear visibility, very clear ownership, and also data that allows them to act before it becomes a risk. So yeah.
So it is a question of coming back to visibility, and if we go back to the survey, it all actually boiled down to what can you see and what do you do with that. Jaco, as a closing question to you, I think it cannot be disputed that when we do focus on water, there is a return that will be realized by the business. What I'm more interested in was, what are the different types of return that a business realizes when it does all of the things we've been speaking about, when it tracks the data, it has the monitoring systems, it drives efficiencies, it drives awareness, there's behavioral change. What have you seen as the various types of return?
Yeah, I think one of the previous panelists made a comment that the operational teams need to be able to put forward the financial measures to the CEOs and the CFOs and be able to demonstrate that to get traction. I think once you get past the financials, there are actually many additional benefits. So financially, there's a lot of benefits in that by utilizing contaminated water in comparison to potable water. If you just look at the costs, but additional benefits you're getting is from a social and an environmental perspective, as well as a regulatory perspective. The communities around you, apart from the direct usage, there are programs that we're running, agricultural programs in teaching the actual community how to reuse water for agricultural purposes as well. And then obviously the environmental side of things, by reducing the impact that you've got as a major mining house on the environment, there's massive traction that you get, and then that links back to the financial side of things. We're in a room full of financial people probably, and the fund managers and the capital of the world have got certain requirements on them to make sure that whoever they invest in are sustainable and responsible investors. And I just want to make one last comment, and I think that also goes to the regulator. If you as a responsible business are doing the correct things, it makes your relationship with your regulator so much easier. So overall, more than just one capital that you can benefit
Financial
from.
returns, social returns, regulatory returns, which are relational returns, and of course returns on the sustainability front. Now, what's happened, everyone else can't see is we've got a little clock in front of us that is flashing red and telling us that we need to stop talking, but I really, really need to do this. I want to close off this conversation in a really fun way, and I'd like to think about it as calling on you to think about a billboard. On that billboard, Molatelo, it's okay, you're giving me a very worried look now. On that billboard is one line that captures what you think is the biggest lesson you've learned around centering and anchoring water in business operations. It's a billboard, guys, so it's not an executive summary, it is not a proposal, it's not a report, it's a billboard, it's one line, Investec is paying, it's going to be out by the Sandton Gautrain. Just one line, and I'm going to help you. It's going to start off with the biggest lesson, and then you complete the sentence, okay? The biggest lesson, complete the sentence. The most confident person is usually the one looking at me dead in the eye, and that happens to be you, Molatelo. So let's start off with you. The biggest lesson.
The biggest lesson is that you cannot do it alone. You need to collaborate.
Okay, so, the biggest lesson is that you cannot do it alone and you need to collaborate. That's the billboard. Yes, let's give Molatelo a big round of applause. Thank you very much. I'm having a look and, okay, Derrick, dead in the eye, all right? The biggest lesson?
Is to manage water in the development from inception to disposable.
Is to manage water from inception to disposable. Let's give Derrick Pautz a big round of applause. Short and sharp. Natasha's even giving me a wink. She's ready. Okay. The biggest lesson.
Partnerships will be vital to move us forward.
It's almost as if she'd planned this before. Partnerships are vital in moving us forward. Let's give Natasha a big round of applause. All right. So if 25% of your job is thinking about water, I need 1% to be about creativity. The biggest lesson.
The fastest way to lose your business is to disregard water.
Well, that was really good. The fastest way to lose your business is disregard water. Let's give the CEO a big round of applause. That's really, really good.